Samantha Parker had never imagined her life would come to this. A single mother in her mid-30s, she sat at her tiny wooden dining table, her laptop's dim screen casting a pale glow over her exhausted face. The air in her small apartment was thick with silence, broken only by the soft hum of the refrigerator and the distant honking of cars outside. Bills were scattered across the table, an unopened eviction notice lying beneath them like a silent threat. She had read it once, twice, so many times that the words had burned into her mind. Final notice. Her small business had been her lifeline, a dream she had built from the ground up, piece by piece, sacrificing sleep, time, and sometimes even meals to keep it afloat. It had started with hope, a little online boutique selling handmade baby clothes inspired by the struggles she had faced as a new mother. In the beginning, sales trickled in, giving her just enough to survive. But things had changed. The past few months had been brutal. The rising cost of materials, the ever-changing algorithms of social media, and the sheer struggle of being seen in a sea of competition had left her drowning. Orders had slowed to a painful crawl. Her bank account, once a source of cautious optimism, had withered into a series of terrifying negative balances. She exhaled shakily, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. She had spent the past hour staring at an empty post on a Facebook business group, a place where entrepreneurs shared advice and sometimes, just sometimes, asked for help. The idea of putting her struggles into words made her stomach twist. What if they judged her? What if no one cared? She had always been the strong one, the one who found solutions instead of asking for them. But tonight, she was out of options. With a deep breath, she started typing. The words poured out, each sentence a reluctant confession of her desperation. I don't know if this is the right place for this, but I'm really struggling. My business is failing, and I don't know what to do. I've tried everything. Ads, social media, discounts, but nothing is working. I'm a single mom, and this business is all I have to support my son. If anyone has advice, I'd be so grateful. Her finger hesitated over the post button. Once she clicked it, there would be no taking it back. It would be out there, her failure, her vulnerability, open for strangers to see. But then, she thought, of her son, peacefully asleep in the next room, blissfully unaware of how close they were to losing everything. With a silent prayer, she pressed the button. The post was live. She closed her laptop, expecting nothing. Maybe a few empty words of encouragement or worse, silence. Either way, it was done. She had taken a step, however small. What she didn't know was that, miles away, in a sleek office space in San Francisco, a man named Daniel Carter was about to stumble upon her post, and it would change both of their lives forever. Samantha had never been one to dwell on her struggles. She had always been the type to push forward, to take on every obstacle with quiet resilience. But resilience wasn't paying the bills. She had grown up in a small town in Ohio, raised by a single mother who had done everything in her power to provide for her children. From a young age, Samantha had learned that life was a constant balancing act, one where sacrifice was inevitable. She had never expected things to be easy, but she also hadn't expected them to be this hard. Her son, Oliver, was the center of her universe. At just 6 years old, he was full of boundless energy and an infectious optimism that she envied. He didn't know about the late-night panic attacks, the endless calls to landlords and credit card companies, the way she had to pretend everything was fine, when, in reality, she was barely holding on. He didn't know that some nights she skipped dinner just so he could have enough. Her business had been born out of necessity. When Oliver was a baby, she had struggled to find affordable, high-quality clothing that didn't irritate his sensitive skin. So she had taken matters into her own hands, learning to sew during late nights and nap times. What had started as a passion project had turned into a small online boutique. At first, things had been promising. Friends and family had placed orders, word had spread, and soon she had a steady stream of customers. But the internet was ruthless. Algorithms changed. Competition grew. What had once been a thriving side hustle had turned into a desperate fight for survival. She had poured everything into it, every spare dollar, every waking hour, and yet it wasn't enough. She had tried paid ads, but they drained her already fragile budget. She had tried collaborations, but her following was too small to attract attention. She had tried discounts, but that only cut further into her profits. Every possible solution felt like another step toward an inevitable collapse. Her post on Facebook had been a last-ditch effort, not a plea for pity, just a desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, someone out there had an answer she hadn't thought of. She had no idea that someone had seen it, and that someone was about to change everything. Daniel Carter had built his life on logic and problem-solving. A senior software engineer at Facebook, he spent his days buried in lines of code, fine-tuning algorithms, and optimizing user experiences. His work was precise, methodical, a world away from the chaos of struggling entrepreneurs trying to navigate the unpredictable tides of online business. To most, he had the perfect life, a high-paying job, a modern apartment in the heart of San Francisco, stability. But lately, something had been missing. For years, he had been consumed by his career, working late nights and chasing promotions. He had spent his 20s proving himself, moving up the corporate ladder, perfecting his craft. And he had succeeded. But as he neared 40, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. His job was fulfilling, but in a sterile, impersonal way. He built systems that impacted millions of people, yet he felt disconnected from them. One evening, he had been aimlessly scrolling through Facebook, absent-mindedly observing the endless stream of posts, when something caught his eye, a short, unassuming post from a struggling single mother. He almost scrolled past it, almost, but something made him stop. Maybe it was the raw honesty in her words, the quiet desperation of someone trying to keep their head above water. Maybe it was the way she reminded him of his own mother, who had worked 2 jobs to put food on the table after his father walked out. Maybe it was simply because, for the first time in a long time, he saw a problem he knew he could actually solve. Daniel clicked on her profile. He scrolled through her business page, scanned through her website. Within minutes, he could already see what was wrong. She wasn't failing because her products were bad. She wasn't failing because she lacked effort. She was failing because she was playing a game whose rules she didn't understand, and that was something he could fix. Without thinking too much about it, he started typing. "Hey, Samantha, I saw your post. I think I can help." He hit send, and just like that, 2 completely different worlds began to collide. Samantha had not expected a response. After hitting post, she had closed her laptop and tried to push the thought from her mind. The idea that some stranger on the internet would swoop in with the perfect solution felt ridiculous. She had done everything she could. She had researched, watched countless hours of YouTube tutorials, followed marketing gurus who promised results. And yet, here she was, her business on the brink of collapse. So, when she finally opened her inbox the next morning and saw a message from a man named Daniel Carter, she hesitated. "Hey, Samantha, I saw your post. I think I can help." Help. That word had lost its meaning over the years. People had offered to help before, but there was always a catch. Advice that led nowhere, empty words of encouragement or worse, sales pitches disguised as generosity. The last thing she needed was another person trying to sell her a miracle solution that didn't exist. She clicked on his profile. His picture showed a clean-cut man in his late 30s, standing in front of what looked like the Facebook headquarters. His bio confirmed it. Senior software engineer at Facebook. Samantha narrowed her eyes. Why would a Facebook engineer message her? Her first instinct was to ignore him, but then she thought about Oliver, about the bills stacked on the counter, about the suffocating weight of failure pressing down on her chest. What did she have to lose? She typed back, keeping her message short. Thanks for reaching out. What kind of help are you talking about? The reply came quickly. I work with ad algorithms and user engagement. I took a quick look at your website and social media. I think there are a few things we can tweak to get better results." A few things? She had spent months trying to figure out what was wrong. The idea that he could diagnose the problem in minutes was almost insulting. "I appreciate it, but I've already tried running ads. They just drain money," I figured. "But I think I see why they're not working. If you're open to it, I can walk you through some changes. No strings attached." No strings attached. That was the part she didn't believe. For the next hour, Samantha debated. She paced the tiny space between her kitchen and living room, going back and forth between ignoring him and taking the chance. She had trusted before. She had believed in people before. And time again, she had been let down. But then, as she reached for her cup of coffee, her eyes landed on the final notice letter. And suddenly, the decision was made for her. "Okay, I'm listening." Within minutes, they were on a video call. Samantha had expected some arrogant tech guy talking down to her, throwing around complex terms she didn't understand. But Daniel surprised her. He spoke plainly, directly, explaining things without making her feel small. "First off, your ads aren't bad. They're just not optimized for the right audience." He shared his screen, breaking down how Facebook's algorithm actually worked. He explained why her posts weren't reaching people, why her ad money was being wasted, and why the traffic she was getting wasn't converting into sales. It was like someone had turned on the lights in a room she had been stumbling around in for years. But just as quickly as her hopes started to build, doubt crept in. "Why are you doing this?" she asked suddenly. "What's in it for you?" Daniel paused. He hadn't prepared for that question. "I guess?" He hesitated, then gave a small shrug. "Because I can. Because I know how this system works, and I see people struggle with it all the time. And because my mom was a single parent too, I know how hard it is." For the first time in a long time, Samantha felt something she hadn't let herself feel in years: hope. But hope wasn't enough, because as Daniel started guiding her through changes, rewriting her ad copy, adjusting her targeting, tweaking her website, something unexpected happened. Things got worse. For the first few days, nothing seemed to work. Samantha followed Daniel's instructions carefully. She adjusted the wording on her ads, changed her target audience, restructured her website for better navigation, things she had never even considered before. It all made sense on paper. The logic was there. And yet, instead of seeing an improvement, sales plummeted. At first, she tried to stay calm. Maybe the algorithm needed time to adjust. Maybe people needed to see her ads a few times before they decided to buy. But as days passed, frustration gnawed at her. The silence in her inbox was deafening. No new orders, no messages from potential customers, just an empty void where her last bit of hope had once lived. "Daniel, I don't think this is working." She had tried to keep her voice steady, but the exhaustion cracked through. Daniel, ever analytical, studied the numbers. "It's early. These things take time." "I don't have time," she snapped, surprising even herself. "I need this to work now, not in a few weeks. I'm already behind on rent. I don't know how I'm going to buy groceries next month. If I don't get sales, I'm done." Silence. For a moment, she thought he was going to tell her to be patient, to trust the process. Instead, he said something that caught her off guard. "What's your story?" Samantha blinked. "What? Your story? Why did you start this business?" I already told you. I wanted to make comfortable clothes for babies." Daniel shook his head. "That's what you sell. That's not your story." Samantha frowned, feeling irritation rise in her chest. What did this have to do with anything? "People don't just buy products," Daniel continued. "They buy from people they connect with. They buy from people they trust. Right now, your website is just another store. Your ads are just another promotion. There's nothing that makes people feel invested in you." Samantha folded her arms. "So what are you saying? I should just pour my heart out online and hope someone buys something out of pity?" Daniel sighed. "No. I'm saying people need a reason to care. You're a single mom trying to build something from nothing. You're someone who saw a problem firsthand and created a solution. But right now, your business doesn't reflect that. It looks like every other generic baby store out there. Samantha let out a frustrated breath. Okay, fine. How do I fix that? The next few days were unlike anything Samantha had ever done before. Under Daniel's guidance, she rewrote her entire business message. Instead of focusing on discounts and promotions, she started telling her story, the long nights sewing by hand, the struggles of being a single mom, the reason she had started this business in the first place. She posted about her journey on social media. She shared photos of Oliver, of the tiny sewing machine she had started with, of the first order she had ever shipped, and something incredible happened. People responded. Her followers, many of whom had been silent for months, began commenting, sharing, reaching out. Mothers related to her struggles. Women who had once been in her shoes sent her messages of encouragement. For the first time, her audience saw her not as just another online store, but as a person. But Daniel wasn't done. We need to get you in front of the right people. Using his knowledge of the Facebook algorithm, he helped her create content that would actually reach potential customers. They tested new ad formats, experimented with engagement strategies, and connected with parenting influencers who resonated with her message. It was slow at first, painfully slow. But then, one day, it happened. A message popped up in her inbox. Hi, I just saw your story. Your clothes are beautiful, and I'd love to place an order. Samantha stared at the screen, her heart pounding. She typed back, trying to sound composed, but her hands were shaking. Minutes later, another message came. In. Then another, her first real orders in weeks. Tears welled in her eyes. It was working, but the real test was yet to come, because just as her business was starting to find its rhythm, something happened that threatened to destroy everything. Again, Samantha should have felt relief. The orders were finally coming in, not in overwhelming numbers, but steadily. A few new customers every day. Messages from mothers who resonated with her story. For the first time in months, she had hope. But hope was fragile, and reality had a way of reminding her that things could always get worse. It started with a routine login. Samantha had woken up early, before Oliver stirred, ready to check on the new ads Daniel had helped her launch. But when she tried to access her Facebook business page, an error message flashed across the screen. Your account has been disabled for violating Facebook's advertising policies. Her stomach dropped. She tried again, and again. Nothing. Her page was gone, the ads were gone, the customers she had just started to reach, gone. She scrambled to check her email, her fingers shaking. A generic message from Facebook awaited her. Your business account has been flagged for suspicious activity and is under review. If you believe this was a mistake, you can submit an appeal. A review? How long would that take? Hours? Days? Weeks? Her breath came in short, sharp gasps. This was a mistake, a glitch. They would fix it. They had to fix it. But deep down, a terrifying thought crept in. What if this was it? What if, after everything, she was back to zero? She called Daniel. The moment he answered, she let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Daniel, my page is gone. A pause, then, what? She explained everything in a rush, her voice rising with panic. They said it's under review, but I don't know why. I followed every single step you told me to. I didn't break any rules. Daniel was silent for a moment, and that scared her more than anything. Then, he exhaled sharply. Okay, first, take a deep breath. I don't need a deep breath. I need my business back. And freaking out isn't going to fix it. His voice was calm, but firm. This happens more often than you think. Sometimes Facebook's automated systems flags accounts by mistake. Let me look into it. Samantha spent the rest of the day refreshing her email, waiting for some miracle. But the only thing that came was silence. Meanwhile, Daniel was digging. He reached out to a former colleague who worked on Facebook's policy team, trying to find out what had happened. Hours later, he called Samantha back. "I have good news and bad news." Samantha closed her eyes. "Give me the bad news first. Your account was flagged because of the sudden spike in engagement. The algorithm thought it was bot activity." Samantha let out a bitter laugh. "So because my business was finally doing well, they shut it down?" "Pretty much. Unbelievable. And the good news? I might be able to fast-track your appeal. No guarantees, but I'll push it through the right channels." It was something, but not enough. Days passed. Her inbox remained empty. The orders that had given her hope stopped coming. The momentum she had built was slipping through her fingers like sand, and for the first time in a long time, she thought about giving up. That night, after putting Oliver to bed, Samantha sat in the dark, staring at her laptop. The weight of exhaustion, of defeat, pressed down on her. She had tried, she had fought, and it still wasn't enough. A single thought whispered in the back of her mind, maybe it's time to let this go. Her hands hovered over the keyboard, ready to type one final message to Daniel, thanking him for everything, but telling him she couldn't do this anymore. But before she could, a notification popped up on her phone, an email from Facebook. "Your business account has been reinstated." For a moment she just stared, unable to process the words. Then, shaking, she clicked. Her page was back. Her ads were running. And at the bottom of the email, a note. "Your appeal has been reviewed and approved. Thank you for your patience." She didn't know if it had been Daniel or just luck, but at that moment, she didn't care. She picked up her phone and called him. "We're back." She could hear the smile in his voice. "Then let's make sure this never happens again." This time, they moved differently, smarter. Daniel helped her create backup ad accounts, alternative traffic streams. He taught her how to own her audience, building an email list, engaging customers beyond social media, making sure no algorithm could ever erase her overnight again. And this time, the growth wasn't slow. It was explosive. Because the shutdown had done something unexpected. It had made people rally around her. Her story, once a quiet struggle, was now a battle people cared about. Customers weren't just buying her products, they were supporting her. And for the first time, Samantha saw it. She wasn't just selling baby clothes. Samantha had spent so long fighting to keep her business alive that she had never stopped to imagine what success might actually feel like. But now, for the first time, she wasn't just surviving, she was thriving. After regaining access to her account, the orders didn't just trickle in, they surged. Messages poured into her inbox, not just from customers, but from supporters, people who had followed her story and wanted to see her win. Her once empty order queue was now packed with names, addresses, and special requests. And then, something happened that she had never expected. A single email changed everything. Subject: Wholesale Partnership Opportunity. At first, she thought it was spam, some scammer trying to bait her into another dead-end scheme. But when she opened it, she nearly dropped her phone. A well-known boutique chain specializing in eco-friendly baby products had found her story. They loved her designs, loved her brand, and wanted to place a bulk order, a massive bulk order, one big enough to transform her small business into something real, something sustainable, something she had barely dared to dream of. Samantha should have been ecstatic. She should have jumped up and down, screaming with joy. Instead, she felt paralyzed. This was too big, bigger than anything she had ever handled. How would she fulfill such a large order? How would she scale production? Would she need a warehouse? A team? She was just one person, running everything from her tiny apartment. She called Daniel. "I don't think I can do this." She expected him to tell her to take a deep breath, to talk her down from the ledge of self-doubt. But instead, he laughed. "Of course you can. Daniel, this is huge. What if I mess it up? Then you figure it out the same way you figured out everything else. You didn't come this far to stop now." His confidence in her was infuriating, and exactly what she needed. So instead of running from the opportunity, She did what she had learned to do best. She adapted. Samantha hired help, a few stay-at-home moms from her community who wanted flexible work. Together, they created a small but dedicated team fulfilling orders from her makeshift home workshop. She outsourced some of the production, carefully selecting manufacturers who aligned with her brand's values. She automated parts of her business, setting up systems that made her website, customer service, and inventory management run smoothly without her having to do everything manually. And just like that, she was no longer just a struggling single mom running a small shop. She was a business owner. The first wholesale order led to another and another. Soon, her brand was featured in parenting blogs, local magazines, even an online article about women entrepreneurs to watch. One night, after an exhausting but fulfilling day, she sat at her desk and looked at her bank account. For the first time since she started, she wasn't worried about making rent. For the first time, she could take Oliver to the store and let him pick out a toy without calculating if she could afford it. And for the first time, she allowed herself to believe, really believe, that she had done it. She had won, but there was one last thing left to do. Samantha pulled out her laptop, opened Facebook, and started typing. 2 years ago, I started this business with nothing but a sewing machine and a dream. There were times I wanted to quit, times I thought I had failed. But today, I want to share something with all of you who have been part of this journey. She attached a photo of her first ever order, a tiny onesie she had sewn by hand, and next to it, a picture of her latest wholesale shipment, hundreds of beautifully packaged products ready to be sent out across the country. Her hand hovered over the post button. Then she hit send. Within minutes, the comments started flooding in. Messages of support, of congratulations, of people telling her how inspired they were, and among them a simple one from Daniel. "Told you," Samantha laughed. She had spent so long waiting for the moment when she would finally feel like she had made it. And now she realized she already had. Samantha used to believe that success was a finish line, a single moment where everything suddenly became easy, where the struggles of the past faded away, and the future unfolded effortlessly. But standing in her new workshop, watching her small but dedicated team carefully package each order, she realized something. Success wasn't an endpoint. It was a process, a constant evolution, a cycle of challenges and victories, of failures and comebacks. And she was finally ready for all of it. Her days looked different now. Mornings no longer started with panic, with the crushing anxiety of wondering whether she could keep her business afloat. Instead, they started with Oliver laughing as they ate breakfast together, because she finally had the time to enjoy these small, beautiful moments. She worked on her business, not just in it. Instead of scrambling to make ends meet, she was planning for growth, expanding her product line, exploring new partnerships, investing in marketing strategies that she now understood. She was no longer just surviving. She was building a future, and yet, despite everything she had accomplished, there was still one person she needed to thank. She dialed Daniel's number, half expecting him to be too busy to pick up, but after just 2 rings, his familiar voice came through. "Samantha, to what do I owe the honor?" she smiled. "I just realized something. We've never actually met in person." Daniel chuckled. "Yeah, I guess we haven't. So how about we change that?" A few weeks later, Samantha found herself walking into a cafe, her heart pounding in a way that felt ridiculous. Daniel wasn't a stranger. He had been one of the most important people in her life these past few months. And yet, as she scanned the room, looking for the man who had played such a crucial role in her journey, she felt nervous. And then she saw him. He looked just like his profile picture, except for the warm, knowing smile that spread across his face as he spotted her. "Samantha," she laughed. "I half expected you to be a robot, you know." "I get that a lot." They sat, and for the first time, they talked outside of business. About life, about dreams, about how strange and unpredictable the world could be. And then, after a pause, She finally said the words she had been holding in for so long. "Thank you," Daniel waved a hand dismissively. "You did all the work." "No," she said, shaking her head. "I wouldn't have made it without you." He met her eyes. "Maybe. But the real question is, what are you going to do now?" She smiled. "Now? Now, I help someone else." Samantha never forgot what it felt like to be at rock bottom, to be on the edge of giving up, convinced that success was for other people, that no matter how hard she tried, she'd never make it. And she never forgot what it felt like when someone reached out a hand and pulled her back up. So she started something new, a mentorship program for small business owners, especially single mothers trying to build something of their own. She shared everything she had learned, the struggles, the mistakes, the victories. She became the guide she once desperately needed, and as she watched the first woman she mentored land her first big sale, she realized something. This wasn't just about business. This was about breaking cycles, about proving that no matter where you start, no matter how many times you fall, you can rise. That success isn't about luck or privilege. It's about resilience. And as she walked out of her workshop that evening, hand in hand with Oliver, she smiled to herself because this wasn't just her business. This was her legacy.